Well, good morning guys, I hope you're all doing well. We've got an absolutely stunning morning this morning. It's the first frost I've actually seen up here, so the light's absolutely lovely. So what I thought we'd do this week is I've got one camera and one lens with me, and I just thought I'd give myself a bit of a challenge to see what I can get with just those things. I know it looks a bit much with a big rucksack and everything on, but in order to get this video for you guys I've got to carry a bit more gear than I should. But I thought we'll try one camera, one lens, have a wander around this woodland and see what we can find. Let's go and have a walk. So, two things that you might have noticed. I brought my big tripod today, and guess what I didn't bring? A base plate to go on the camera. Great, eh? So what I've had to do is precariously balance you guys on top of my good tripod, the good tall tripod, and I'm gonna have to swap out and use my vlogging tripod as my main tripod today. One of those things. Just have to make do and mends. So, what I did is I've recently bought a little Fuji X-T1. And the reason is basically when I'm at work and I'm driving around in the van all day, I always like to have a camera in the van, just in case I spot somewhere on my route that I want to come back to, or the conditions are great and I haven't got the big camera with me. I just wanted something to be able to carry with me. Now what it's done is, I've noticed this last couple of weeks, it's forced me into learning a whole new system, because instead of, obviously I shoot Sony at the minute, and I haven't got rid of it because I've had a few questions asking whether I've actually got rid of the Sony system, and I haven't. I just wanted an entirely different system, just to give me a bit of a challenge really, and learn an entirely new system, and just have a play around and see how this works. And I have to say, this last couple of weeks I've really enjoyed using it. With all these lovely tactile dials and everything on the top, it's just a real joy to use. And what I've noticed is because it's different today, because I'm having to carry all this gear around for me to film this, but on other days where I've just gone out with this camera, all I've had to carry with me is this camera and a tripod, and that's all I've taken. And it's allowed me to walk through the woods and scout areas a lot better. And I can just stop, take an image and carry on without having to lump all this gear around with me. So it gave me the idea of setting myself a challenge, is just to come out with this camera and just have a walk around with it and see what I can find. And this is the perfect morning for it really. It's absolutely beautiful light because it's that sort of frosty morning and it's low light. Well, not low light, but what I mean is the sun's low in the sky still at this time of year, so the light throughout the woodland is absolutely superb at the minute. So I've challenged myself with this. It's just a 16-50 kit lens and the X-T1. So we'll have a little wander around, see what we can find, and get into it once I find something. So because of my mistake with my tripod this morning, I'm having to hand-hold sections of this, so I'm sorry if it's a little bit shaky, but it's a touch on the cold side. So, I don't know if you can see that, it's just spinning around. basically what I'm focusing on is this group of silver birch off in the distance. And the reason why it drew my eye to it is basically because there's lovely light falling on the trees. And on top of that, there's plenty of separation. I can get into a position where none of the trees are really overlapping and they're all separated quite nicely. And I just love that sort of warm glow that they've got on the sides of them. So that kind of drew me to the scene. So basically what I've gone for is, at the minute I'm shooting landscape orientation. I'm at f11 and around about 1/3 of a second, ISO 200. So I'm going to take this shot about 1/3 of the way into the scene. And see how it comes out. Now yeah, that's looking pretty nice. The only thing that I'm not entirely too sure on is all this sort of mess down on the foreground here. All these sorts of brambles and everything and the old dead leaves. But I think it's just a case of I'm going to have to make do with that because there's not a great deal else and I can't get any higher to actually blank out a lot of that space. But if this image has turned out alright, I'll pop it up now. Now, I don't know whether you can see me, but the other good thing about carrying just one camera on its own is that because you're not carrying all this gear and everything around, you tend to notice the smaller details. And just as I was having a walk through the woods here, I noticed that on the floor, because it's been frosty overnight, you can see this fern. And obviously it's died off and it's lying down, but it's got lovely little ice crystals and everything on it. And the light that's coming through the woods is just illuminating the fern itself. So what I decided to do is just hand hold it and see if I can grab a shot of it and see how it turns out. Now on the back of the camera it's looking really, really nice, but it's one of those things that you don't actually, or I never actually know until I get back to the computer and the bigger screen. But it might just be one of those things that turns out quite well. Now if it turns out quite nice, I'll pop it up now. Now I don't know about you guys as well, but with just walking around handheld with the camera, I'm noticing smaller details a lot more than I normally would. It's like this sort of scene here that I probably would have walked past with this fungus growing out of the, it's a silver birch stump. It looks absolutely stunning. And I probably would never have seen it before because I've been too focused on carrying all this gear around with me and never really having the camera out the bag to see it. And I probably would have thought, no, I'm not going to get the camera out for that. But because I've got the camera in hand and I'm walking past, it doesn't take 5 minutes to grab a shot. And I've got a feeling that this could be a really, really nice shot. I mean, it's not going to be world class or anything like that, but I think it's a nice detail shot that I otherwise probably wouldn't have seen. Now, I don't know about you guys, but what I've noticed since carrying this little camera around is that I've found woodland photography a little bit easier, a little bit more simple. And I think the reason for it is the more I've kind of thought about it to try and work out why that is, I think it's actually the focal length of the lens more than the actual camera, if I'm honest. And because I've only got this lens, this one lens for this camera. It's a 16-50 lens. And that's around about, I think, about a 24-70 on full frame. So I think what I'm going to do in future on the Sony is if I'm out and about with that camera, if I'm in woodland, I'm going to put the 28-70 on and see if that actually helps me in the same way as this is. But I think that focal length is just simplifying a lot of scenes for me, whereas I've got this bad habit with the Sony of walking around with the 16-35 on quite a lot. I've also got the 70-200, but I struggle with that a little bit in woodland, especially in these sorts of woodlands where everything's quite close together and confined. I struggle to separate everything out as best as I could. So I think this sort of focal length is actually suited to me a lot better in woodland. And over the last couple of weeks, I've found myself just walking around with this camera in the woods, and I'm seeing scenes that I wouldn't normally see, and I think that's the reason for it. I'll pop a few of those images up that I've taken over the last couple of weeks, and you'll see what I mean about it. So guys, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this. Do you find it easier just carrying a camera around with you, or reducing the size of your actual camera equipment and just carrying a small pack? I've noticed a complete change in the way I approach woodland just with cutting down the amount of gear I carry and actually carrying my camera in hand. With carrying it around, I find that I'm more willing to actually take a shot than have to get all my gear out my bag, put it down, set it all up. If I'm actually got it in my hand at the time, I'm actually more prone to try and experiment in my surroundings. What do you think? Leave me comments down below. And with that in mind, guys, about leaving comments down below, I've got an idea for a new series, and I want to get you guys more involved. So the new series is going to be called How Would You? And the idea behind it is I'm going to go out and shoot some scenes and maybe come up with 2 or 3 different ways of shooting it. And then I'm going to get you to leave your comments down below as to how you would have approached the scene and how you would have done it. And then in the following week, the idea would be to get a guest on to come and talk through what I've done with the shots and how they would have approached the scene, and see how the 2 lots of comments actually match up. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. See you again soon. Bye bye.